My name is Betty, and I am now 29 years old. As I look back on my life, I can clearly see how different my journey has been from my younger sister Emma's. We grew up in a small town, surrounded by family, but our experiences were not the same. From a young age, it was clear that my parents favored Emma. She was their little star, the one they always praised and spoiled. No matter what she did, they celebrated her achievements and made sure she had everything she wanted. I, on the other hand, often felt like an afterthought. Our home was always filled with comparisons between us. My parents would point out how Emma was excelling while ignoring my efforts. When she played soccer, they never missed a single practice or game. But when I played tennis, they barely noticed. Even when I reached the finals in middle school, they weren't there to cheer for me. Emma is 8 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, she became the center of attention. She was given expensive gifts on her birthdays, while my birthdays were often merged with Christmas and forgotten. My presents were usually school supplies or things I didn't care about. Meanwhile, Emma received thoughtful and exciting gifts that made her feel special. Despite all of this, Emma was kind to me in her own way. She would try to encourage me when I felt left out. I still remember the time she gave me a bouquet of flowers after my last tennis match. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me because it showed she cared. Our grandparents, who lived with us for many years, noticed the unfair treatment and tried to speak up for me. They would remind my parents to be more fair, to show me love just as they did Emma. But when they passed away, I lost my strongest supporters. Their absence made everything worse. Over time, even Emma stopped standing up for me as much. I think she grew tired of always trying to defend me. Our mother, especially, was very hard on me, and Emma probably didn't want to get on her bad side. When our grandparents were alive, they helped our family financially. But after they were gone, money became a bigger problem. I had always dreamed of going to college to study design, but that dream quickly faded. My parents told me there was no money for my education, even though they had plenty to send Emma to a prestigious university. Instead of college, I had to take an office job at a small design company far from home. It wasn't the future I had imagined, but it was still connected to what I loved, designing websites. I worked on creating sites for women-focused businesses like hair and nail salons. Even though life was unfair to me in many ways, I have learned to find my own path. My journey wasn't as smooth as Emma's, but it made me stronger. Betty looks back on her family relationships, the pain of always feeling second best, and the quiet strength it took to chase her dreams despite the challenges. Her journey is proof that no matter how tough things get, hard work and determination can lead to success. From a young age, Betty was eager to take on more responsibilities. She always wanted to prove herself, even when she felt like her parents didn't believe in her. Over time, this drive led her to become a user experience designer at her office. The job wasn't easy. She worked with professionals who had much more experience than her. But instead of feeling discouraged, she saw it as a challenge. It pushed her to work harder and get better at what she loved, interactive design. Every day, Betty's passion for her job grew stronger. She knew that if she wanted to succeed, she had to keep learning. But her parents didn't support her career choice. They didn't understand why she chose design instead of something more respectable in their eyes. Because of this, home didn't feel like a welcoming place anymore. She visited less often, knowing that every conversation with her parents would be filled with disappointment and judgment. Instead of dwelling on their disapproval, Betty used her free time wisely. She spent weekends and holidays taking online courses to improve her design skills. She worked hard to master new software, and her dedication paid off. Soon, she was officially part of the design team at her company. Her enthusiasm stood out, and her colleagues began to notice. They recommended useful resources and introduced her to important people in the industry. 5 years into her career, Betty was managing her own projects. She had grown from an eager beginner to a full-fledged interactive designer. By the time 9 years had passed since high school, she had established herself in her field. She was proud of what she had achieved on her own, without her parents' support. One day, Betty heard that her younger sister, Emma, was getting ready to start university. She had been accepted into a prestigious medical school in a big city. Given her excellent grades and strong work ethic, it wasn't a surprise. Thinking about their past and how Emma had always been kind to her, Betty wanted to help. A few months later, Emma got into her first-choice medical school, and Betty congratulated her warmly. However, Emma seemed a bit worried. She explained that the school encouraged families to make a donation, even though it wasn't required. Their parents were concerned about what people would think if they didn't contribute, but money was already tight. On top of tuition and high living costs, it would be difficult to afford everything. Emma planned to get a part-time job to help cover her expenses, but medical school was demanding. Betty understood her struggle and wished she could do more to help. She knew how hard it was to work toward a dream when support was limited. Even though I wanted to help, our family didn't have much money. My father worked as a real estate agent, and my mother only had a part-time job. They were already struggling to manage our household expenses. What surprised me the most was that, instead of asking me directly, my parents told Emma to ask me for financial support. This hurt me because it felt like they only saw me as someone to turn to when they needed money, not as a valued member of the family. Despite my feelings, I didn't want Emma to suffer. I knew how important medical school was to her, so I decided to help. I paid for the donation and other school fees so that she could start her journey without worrying about finances. She moved to a new place near her university and began her independent life as a student. Because of her demanding studies, we didn't talk as much as before. Our conversations became less frequent, and when we did talk, they felt different. Still, whenever she needed something, whether it was a specific item or help with something, I was always there for her. Even in these small ways, I wanted to support her and make her life a little easier. Emma and I have always had a complicated relationship. Our parents treated us very differently, which shaped the way we saw each other. Sometimes, we would meet for a meal, but she was often distracted, scrolling through her phone instead of talking to me. No matter how hard I tried to connect with her, she always reminded me how difficult medical school was. It felt like she was distancing herself, and I didn't understand why. One day, I tried to make a light-hearted joke about her parents. I mentioned how they always favored her achievements over mine, hoping to bring some humor into the conversation. But Emma's response was sharp and cold. She dismissed my words, saying that her path as a medical student was far more important than my career in design. Her words hurt. She claimed that anyone could become a designer by learning online, as if my years of hard work and dedication meant nothing. She made it sound like my job required no real skill or effort, and that stung more than I could express. It was as if she had adopted our parents' view that my career was insignificant compared to hers. As the conversation continued, her tone became even more critical. She repeated the same harsh comparisons our parents always made. They saw her as a future doctor with a bright future, while my career was barely acknowledged. This attitude had clearly influenced Emma, and now she was openly looking down on me. I felt overwhelmed by her words. It was painful to see how deep our parents' favoritism had affected her. At that moment, I realized that no matter how much I supported her, I would always be seen as less important in my own family. I sat there in silence, unable to find the right words. I felt hurt, but I didn't want to show it. Emma saw my reaction and, instead of understanding my feelings, gave me a small, smug smile before leaving the table. It was as if she thought she had won some sort of argument. Since moving out and starting university, Emma had changed. She was surrounded by new friends and classmates who didn't know anything about her past. At school, everyone praised her intelligence and talent, and she fully embraced the admiration. The more people complimented her, the more dismissive she became towards me. This attitude continued even when we both returned home for the holidays. It was the first time Emma had come back since starting university, and our parents were overjoyed to see her. They barely paid attention to me, making me feel more invisible than ever. When we arrived home, I noticed how much effort had been put into welcoming her. The dining table was packed with delicious food, steak, pizza, and all of her favorite dishes. That evening, a big group of people gathered at our house to celebrate Emma's visit. Family members, neighbors, and even some of her old classmates from town came over. Emma was clearly enjoying the attention. She smiled brightly, taking in the admiration. Then, she started speaking loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Mom always tells me I should visit more often," she said dramatically. "But you know how it is. My university is one of the best, especially the medical program. It's so challenging. Between group projects, studying, and helping others, I barely have time to relax. People are always reaching out to me. It can be so overwhelming." As she went on and on, I felt like I didn't belong there. I needed a break, so I got up and walked into the kitchen, pretending I had to check on something. Even from there, I could still hear Emma's voice echoing through the house as she continued talking about her academic success. To our parents, this was normal, but to some of the neighbors and guests, her bragging must have been a bit much. After a while, an elderly neighbor tried to change the subject and turned to me. "So, Betty, how's your work in design going?" they asked kindly. Before I could answer, Emma and my parents jumped in. "She's doing her best," my mother said, shaking her head. "But she's not like Emma." "Yes," my father added. "She chose not to go to college and went into design instead." Their words stung. It wasn't just what they said, it was how they said it, as if my choice was a disappointment. I looked around the room, noticing that some guests seemed uncomfortable. Some of them hadn't gone to college either, choosing to work or take care of their families instead. But no one spoke up. I felt out of place, like I didn't belong in my own home. I was about to leave quietly when Emma suddenly called out. "You come home so often, Betty," she said with a smirk. "I'm doing great at university, so I don't feel embarrassed. Maybe you don't mind coming back because you just don't care." Then she laughed, and to my shock, our parents joined in. Their laughter stung more than anything. I could feel my face burning with anger and hurt. I turned to her and replied sharply, "I understand now. Don't expect me to come back next year." Without waiting for a response, I let the tray I was carrying slip from my hands and walked away. I grabbed my coat and bag, heading for the door. As I left the room, I could feel the eyes of our relatives and neighbors watching me. Some looked concerned, but no one said a word. As I stepped outside, I felt a strange sense of calm. I wasn't sad, just numb. The voices of my parents and Emma echoed in my mind, their dismissive laughter still ringing in my ears. It almost felt like they were cheerfully saying, "Don't come back." On my way to the train station, I struggled to keep my emotions in check. Coming home had always been difficult, but this time I felt truly done. I had spent years trying to make my family proud, hoping they would see my efforts as something valuable. I had built a career as an interactive designer, yet in their eyes, it would never be as impressive as Emma's medical studies. At first, I used my career as a way to distance myself from their judgment. I told myself that if I worked hard enough, they would respect me. But as I grew in my profession, it became clear that their opinions would never change. The distance between us had only grown wider. Emma, still young and protected by her university life, had no idea what it was like to work hard without constant praise. She lived in a world where she was always admired, always celebrated. Meanwhile, I had spent years being overlooked, my achievements treated as unimportant. Maybe my parents thought they were doing their best, but the way they favored Emma had created a deep gap between us. She was their golden child, the one they always spoke proudly about. I, on the other hand, was the one whose efforts were ignored or belittled. That night, as I left home, I made a decision. I couldn't keep trying to please people who didn't appreciate me. I had to let go. Several months passed before I heard from Emma again. Out of nowhere, she started messaging me repeatedly, asking me to pick up her calls. I hadn't blocked her, but I had no real interest in talking to her. Eventually, I hesitated but answered. Her voice was urgent. "Did you pay my tuition fees for this year?" she asked. I took a deep breath and calmly reminded her, "I already paid your entrance fee and the donation when you enrolled. But I didn't know there were more fees. I used up most of my savings helping you the first time." There was silence on the other end. I had no idea about the extra tuition fees Emma was talking about. Over the phone, I could hear her struggling to find the right words, realizing the seriousness of the situation. She hadn't expected me to question it. As the year came to an end, I was shocked once again. After being told to stay away from home, my parents had the nerve to ask me for more money to pay for Emma's education. Did they assume I had endless money to give? Had they planned for her expensive out-of-state university at all, or had they just been spending recklessly, hoping I would step in? Emma explained that while our parents had somehow managed to cover her rent and daily expenses, they were having trouble paying her tuition. That's why they were turning to me for help. By this time, I had made good progress in my career. I was working at a top design company, and my salary had increased significantly. Since I had few personal expenses, my savings had grown over the years. My parents must have known this and assumed I would continue paying for Emma's school. But I wasn't willing to do it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how unfair this situation was. If they had set aside money for Emma's education, where had it gone? Instead of being responsible, they had wasted it, expecting me to cover the costs. Even though I could afford to help her, I made the decision not to. A few days later, my parents called me directly, demanding that I send the tuition money right away. Their voices were filled with frustration, as if I owed them this. But I refused. Their constant pressure only made me more sure of my choice. I felt like I wasn't part of the family anymore, just a source of money for them. They didn't care about my feelings. They never once had a real conversation with me or apologized for how they treated me. All they wanted was financial support. After that, Emma sent me another message, practically begging for help. She said that if I didn't send the money, she would be expelled from school. She claimed that even with scholarships and part-time jobs, it wasn't enough. But her message didn't feel like a sincere request. It felt selfish. She even had the audacity to suggest that if I felt unwelcome at home, she could talk to our parents on my behalf, as if she had any right to act like the middleman in a situation she helped create. That was the last straw. I saved her messages in a separate file, then deleted everything else from my phone. I sent her one final message, letting her know my decision. Then I blocked her number. Family or not, I couldn't allow myself to be treated this way anymore. I refused to be taken advantage of, especially by someone who looked down on me. I completely cut ties with my family, finally giving myself a fresh start. A relative later told me that Emma somehow managed to pay for her second year of university. She got some scholarships and borrowed money from other relatives. However, without extra support for her living expenses, things became too hard for her. Balancing school and part-time work was overwhelming, and after 3 months, she dropped out of university. Before, I had been the one helping both Emma and our family financially. But since I had stopped giving them money, my parents were forced to bring Emma back home. Even though she had been a promising student, without money, she had no way to continue her education. Instead of trying to find another solution, Emma gave up. She spent most of her time playing video games, avoiding real life. At night, she would get frustrated and take out her anger on those around her. One day, by chance, I saw my parents. They looked exhausted and defeated, nothing like the confident, controlling people they used to be. It seemed like even the neighbors felt uncomfortable around them, rarely speaking to them anymore. Then, I heard something shocking. My father, stressed by their financial problems, had done something reckless during his commute and was caught by other passengers. He avoided serious charges by settling the issue, but he had to resign from his job. This made things even worse for my family. My mother tried to find a job, but with little work experience, she struggled. The relatives who used to pass along messages from my parents eventually stopped. They grew tired of my parents constantly asking for help and told me not to worry about them anymore. They assured me that they would handle things, allowing me to move on with my life. And that's exactly what I did. Now I am fully focused on my career in design. I recently got chosen to work on a major project, one that could help me grow professionally and make a name for myself. Feeling motivated, I have also decided to take university entrance exams. I am thinking about studying business management to expand my skills even further. As I step into this new chapter of my life, I feel excited for the future. I have worked hard to get to this point, and for the first time, I am putting myself first. Meanwhile, back at home, things are only getting worse. Without financial support from the community, my father and Emma are struggling even more. But I no longer feel guilty. I spent years trying to gain their approval, sacrificing my own needs to help them. But they never appreciated me. They only saw me as a source of money, not as a valued member of the family. Now I am free, and I am finally building the life I deserve.